Calloway, and it is day 2 of the New Jersey Comic Expo, November 20th, 2016, and I am here with the legendary Neal Adams.
It's day 2, but also the last day because they
day.
didn't have a Friday, so it's Sunday.
Short con. Now, you know Neal. You worked on Ben Casey. Everyone knows.
How old are you? My God.
Old enough.
Ben Casey.
And
Wasn't
Batman.
that back in the Stone Age?
That was back in the Stone Age,
was.
but that's an important part.
We
of
used to bang rocks together to get fire.
And Batman, of course, you brought him out of
Batman.
back into the dark as the great detective.
Right.
And
another Stone Age character.
yeah. But I wanted to talk to you about your continuity studios and your continuity characters that you developed your own characters back in the 80s.
Right.
I have them all. And
So do I.
And you started that in Pacific Comics with Ms. Mystic? Is that right? That was the first?
Yes, I did, and they managed to go bankrupt, owing me $62,000. So I thought, well, what do I do with this investment of time and money? And I decided maybe I ought to publish. So that's how I became a publisher. I mean, we had Ms. Mystic, but we also had Echo of Future Past that we were doing with them. So I went and got properties and certain licenses for European publications, and I spent quite a bit of money. And I think we did, I don't know, maybe we started on issue 1, but then they folded, and I really had no choice but to publish, so I did. So that's how you got all that stuff.
What was the first year that you went into publishing?
Oh, you're asking me what year? Like I'm memorizing years? I don't. I have no idea.
Well, what was the first book? Was it Ms. Mystic, or did you start with Megalith?
Good question. It was probably the second issue of Ms. Mystic, because I did Ms. Mystic with the first issue with Pacific, and then we did the second issue, and then Megalith, and Echo of Future Past was really the big thing, in which we introduced Bucky O'Hare and the monsters and some European strips. And there was a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. Arthur Sidem stuff, Mudwogs, and The City. I'm a little hard pressed to remember all the titles, but there was something like, I don't know, 8 titles, and everybody had 6 or 8 pages. So it was a big catalog of stuff, and they were all good. I mean, I got really good European artists. A thing called which is about sort of weird cavemen on another planet. So anybody who gets those books, you got a bevy of stuff to take a look at. We're not, I mean, if I publish again, or if the company publishes again, we won't be doing Echo, I think, because it's too hard a book to sustain. We're just not used to doing 6-page segments of a story and then collecting them. We're used to doing 6 issues of a comic book and collecting them into a graphic novel. That's become our standard. So the 6-page thing was a European standard, and I followed that standard. But we don't do that. We do 6 issues and then collect it. Because we want a whole story. If we're going to buy a comic book, we want it to be one comic book. We don't want it to be a bunch of stories.
Right.
So, you know, I can see the continuity comic books coming back again with, you know, like DC and Marvel doing 6 issues and then collecting them into a novel.
Okay. So basically coming out as miniseries.
Yeah.
Basically just ready to go.
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes you'll do a miniseries and you'll collect 6, then maybe you'll collect later 12 because they're a connected series. It's hard to predict the future, but we're definitely not going to go with the European model. And I'm really acting as advisor because I'm sort of doing stuff for DC.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my main turnout of stuff. I like to bring other artists along and see what they do. So, you know, I think I'm better served by doing things like Batman, maybe in armor now and then, you know. But I'm kind of spread around the board, and there's an awful lot of things that I do. I mean, we just opened a gallery. I don't know if you know it, at Continuity, and we took half our floor and opened this gallery, and it's basically the Neal Adams Gallery, mostly because it's all my stuff. It's not the Neal Adams Gallery because I want to put my name on a gallery. It's just that all my stuff is in it. But we have something like 50 frame pieces. I mean, it's a big gallery. It's not, you know, oh, here's a little corner of the studio. So when people come up, they're shocked at how many pieces we have up, and it's like a tour through, you know, my career. We got Ben Casey, a lot of Batman, certain paintings, illustrations, large paintings. I'm sort of experimenting with kind of a pop art type of painting technique where, you know, those old pop art things where the artist would rip off Russ Heath and all those guys.
Yep.
Well, I thought, you know, what would be the upgrade of that? The upgrade of that would be the same artist doing his own stuff in a similar style, but doing it for the 70s. In other words, that stuff was for the 50s. Now we can do the 70s, and other artists can do it as well. I mean, it's not just me, but as far as I'm concerned, it is me now. So you get to see large paintings of, say, a panel of Green Lantern, Green Arrow, or Batman, or whatever, so that you get to see the focus on the panel. You get to see the sense of it. You get to see the whole idea of that pop art stuff was to take something that was culturally innovative but unnoticed, and then point a finger at it and say, hey, did you realize this? And the truth of the matter is that in the 70s, when I came along, there was another revolution. And everybody went, oh, you can do that stuff, like perspective and realistic illustration, and you know, this is a new time. And a lot of new artists came in at that time and just began and continued on. So you had, it was another revolution. So we're using the paintings as a way to focus on that revolution.
And coming up, you have a part of the Kamandi series coming up that you're doing a section
I have the
of that?
second issue. The second issue. It's almost done. I'm inking it now. And it's a kind of an experiment, I guess, to do another Jack Kirby thing, which I started myself doing New Gods with Superman, and the coming of Superman. And so they decided to go ahead and do Kamandi. I wonder where the inspiration came from. So I got issue 2, and I'm making as much as I can of it. And they had one interesting thing. They had. You get to do, when you do Kamandi, you get to do, Tyrannosauruses and gorillas and stuff. I'm doing a bird. I'm featuring this bird. So people get to see this bird with a kind of an armored, not armor, but havoc headgear on. It's kind of interesting.
And you're going to leave the story at a cliffhanger that the next artist and writer are going to have
Well,
to
that
pick
seems
up?
to be the idea. I'm not so sure that they're filling in the next writer on what the story is going to be.
Okay.
So he just gets to pick it up in the middle, and he gets to do the next chapter. I don't know that that's a smart idea. I think they have an overall concept, but since I'm not writing my issue, I really don't know. All I know is that I'm following the first issue and doing the second issue, and that's pretty much it. It's like a lark, it's just for fun, and playing with Jack Kirby stuff. I wouldn't call it even playing with Jack Kirby. I played with Jack Kirby stuff in the Superman thing. I don't think that I think we're sort of doing Jack Kirby, but nobody's going to stick to Jack stuff religiously, because after all, it's gorillas and tigers and tyrannosauruses and stuff like that, which is not necessarily the purview of Jack Kirby. He just did all these subjects. So dogs, man dogs and stuff. That's not exactly Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby is New Gods and that kind of stuff. So I don't perceive it as being something where you're sticking religiously to what Jack Kirby did. I think it's just a subject matter. Whereas with the Superman, I stuck to the characters. Very, very different.
Well, speaking of Jack Kirby, when I would buy comic books as a kid, and there'd be a Jack Kirby cover, and then there'd be Jack Kirby on the interiors, I would be so excited. And that would be for Marvel Comics. Now for DC, when I would buy a DC comic and I would find your art on the inside, I would be thrilled. Like, I picked up a copy fairly recently of Aquaman, and inside was a backup story by you, or actually it was woven into the story of Deadman.
Right.
And that was a thrill. It's always a thrill to see your...
Well, it was an Aquaman book with the Deadman story woven into the story.
Right, that's right.
Which was an experiment, an intellectual experiment. How do you take an Aquaman story that's already done and then weave a Deadman story into it? Hard, but it worked out fine. I kind of like that sort of thing. I like it. The truth is that I really like the storytelling and the writing more than I like the art. If you're an artist, it's a pretty much automatic. You draw. If you're a writer, that's kind of a different thing. That's kind of a different story. You write and you create and you innovate concepts and innovative storytelling and stuff like that. The art is, people focus on the art, and I appreciate that, because they're fans. But one of the reasons that you remember my stuff is the storytelling. It's not, I'm not a better artist than the best artists. I'm just as good. But from the storytelling point of view, I'm a very good storyteller. So I do things that make you remember the story. So to me, that's the focus. And I know people, oh, I love your art and all, but that's not what they're remembering. They're really remembering the story. The drug issue. You're remembering the drug issue. You may be drawn well, but we're talking about heroin addiction. Dead man, guy's dead. I mean, that's kind of an impressive concept. Batman, revitalizing Batman, but it wasn't just revitalizing Batman. He, instead of hanging around in the daytime, walking down the street without little kids pointing at him and saying, hey, mommy, that guy's walking around in his underwear, we put him back at night, and we had him come through the window, and we had him do all the Batman stuff. I didn't just change the look of Batman. I really didn't change the look of Batman much at all. I changed what he did and how he acted so that he wasn't like the old television show. He was a creature of the night. So that was the difference. It wasn't that he was drawn better. It was that he was Batman now again. And that's storytelling. I know, I appreciate, believe me, I appreciate that people like my drawing. I think that's terrific. But that's not what it's all about. Even when you look at the stuff that's on my table, there's prints of stories, of covers and stuff. You're really looking at the subject matter. That's right. Not necessarily how well it's drawn, because to be perfectly honest, some of those covers are not drawn very well. That's Superman breaking chains on his chest. Mm-hmm. It's not a very good drawing, but you remember the concept and you remember the chains on the breaking on the Superman's chest, and it's become tremendously iconic. So that it's the idea that you remember, not the drawing. I've done some really good, well-drawn covers, and they get ignored because the idea is either too complicated or too sophisticated, or they don't relate to it, or whatever else. I have a cover that I did for DC, and it's there's a cowboy behind a dead horse, and he's defending himself from Indians that are attacking him, who are on horseback. And the horse is dead that he's behind, so he can't ride the horse. And the Indians are, as they're galloping forward, they're wheeling in their saddles and looking behind themselves, and behind them there's a rocket landing. Now, I think that's a great cover. Nobody else does. They like Superman breaking chains on his chest. And there's nothing I can either do about it or care about, because every time out I try to do a good cover and I try to have a good idea, but it's up to the people to respond to it or not respond to it. So it doesn't matter how much sincerity you add to it or how much good drawing you add to it. It's whether or not the idea appeals to people and touches them where they want to be touched. And so, the Batman Joker cover with the Batman on the card, on the playing card, doesn't even make any sense. This is you can't put somebody on a playing card, but it appeals to everybody, whereas something else might not. It's just the way people are. Yeah. So you never go to the artist to get a criticism. You never go to an artist to get a judgment. He doesn't know. You never know when you do a job what's going to happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Neal. On the cutting edge then, and on the cutting edge now, Mr. Neal Adams. So thank you so much for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.